My name is Marco Valencia, and I'm responsible for success and customer co-innovation for S4HANA Public Cloud. You're attending this session to discuss what is SAP offering for public cloud, or what we call S4HANA Cloud, in a multi-tenant environment. So I will just show you an overview on what the cloud is, what it contains, and maybe answer a couple of questions in regards to how to implement, what to expect. The session today will cover basically most of the aspects around S4HANA Cloud. It will be an overview. I mean, the objective that I have, if you are new to the cloud, at least that you leave this session with that understanding on what the cloud is and what is not. And let me start with the topic. Just look at the trends for ERP. You know, we have been seeing trends in ERP, and I guess that everyone that is running R3 or ERP, they have a system that was built, and some of the strengths was the functional depth that the ERP has, plus the capability to be an integrated system, and it comes with the core processes. A stable system that allows them to do mission-critical installations. What we are seeing, obviously, with the trends on ERP is the ability now to offer a system that could be then deployed as a software as a service and can be cloud-enabled. But obviously, when we talk about software as a service, that comes also with some differences compared with, an on-premise system installed into a data center. Because SAP needs now to offer a digital core that will have then the cloud capabilities, which means it needs to be browser-based. It needs to be also had innovation rounds quarterly to release new information. And that basically translates that we need to have this system be upgraded every quarter, from a technical and a functional perspective, to then continue to add new functionality. And of course, the deployment, if it's in a software as a service, then you will have, the fast provisioning of the system compared with, the way that we traditionally have to implement ERP. Now, we are looking also from a business perspective into more intelligence. And, just to tell you what intelligence is here, and we have heard a lot about machine learning, advanced analytics. But if you look at core business processes, what the trend on ERP is enabling you to then have, let's say, maybe traditional processes that you have with new intelligence that will allow you maybe to do automation. We are seeing, for example, with ERP, to set some, just to give you some cases, traditionally, for example, if you look into planning, material requirements planning is basically the ability then to have a consensus planning, then run MRP, and then do the whole, supply, either you produce or maybe you buying decisions. That's not something new. It has been something that we have been releasing SAP for many years. But for example, what the trends are now is into areas like demand-driven MRP, being able to create buffers. So that's a brand new process that we are able to enable now with the technology that we have, for the processing that we have. But at the same time, we are also developing things like a predictive MRP, which allows then, planners to basically run a predictability model where they can then look at the planning, simulate, for example, what will happen if you change the consensus planning and what affection you will have in capacity. And these are some of the areas that we're able to provide today through the intelligence of the ERP. In the other hand, the UX improvement, that means that we are basically enable the ability to have a different user interface. You will see, for example, in S4 and S4HANA Cloud that we are trying to Fiorize everything in the cloud. Mainly, this is the only option we offer. We only offer Fiori-based interface for the cloud, which means you will be accessing the system always in a web browser, in a secure web browser connection, but it will be a browser-based. And we're adding also specific areas like a digital assistant, where then you can interact with the system also by either an assistant or by voice recognition. We have added a couple of things. And most importantly, what we call these industry best practices. And I mean this because this is the core of the cloud, and that comes with a standardization. I mean, the cloud, what you will see in S4HANA Cloud is that the delivery capability of the functionality is pre-configured with industry best practices. And some of these best practices are what I call new practices in terms of how we go about, specific business processes. The example that I mentioned was, planning. Today we have the traditional planning where you might be running MRP maybe through a forecasting engine, or you can then use these new practices that we have where you will be enabled to use, for example, demand-driven MRP or predictive MRP that SAP is delivering as a pre-configured area that you can then use and install into the cloud. So these are the trends that we are seeing, and basically these trends are reflected in what we offer today with S4HANA Cloud. As I mentioned, you will see a lot of intelligent automation, digital end user experience, and end-to-end analytics. Yesterday, I know in the keynote, there were many announcements. And, probably was hard to follow all the announcements that we have, but particularly there was an announcement that for me was very relevant, mainly for people looking at S4. And this was with S4HANA Cloud. Yesterday, it was announced that we will also deliver SAP Analytics Cloud embedded as a tenant in S4, which will allow you is, per se, S4HANA Cloud now has embedded analytics. We have provided many different analytical view. For every line of business, we provide something that we call overview pages that you can use as a dashboard to then measure your business. Could be if you are in manufacturing or if you are in finance or controlling, you have these dashboards where you can do. But the announcement that we made today is that you will be able to get the basic SAP Analytics Cloud embedded with S4, which will give you then the power of SAP Analytics to then use current information coming from SAP and then create dashboards or stories that will provide you different views of managing your day-to-day business. In addition to what SAP already provides standard with S4. Now, the key capabilities of S4 in the cloud is traditionally all the core processes that we offer in ERP. So we have finance, procurement, enterprise portfolio and project management, what we call EPPM, that basically includes, for those of you working on the ERP side, project systems, right? Have the ability then to manage internal projects. We have supply chain management, sales and distribution, development and design. So if you are considering, for example, S4HANA Cloud, you have a full core business processes embedded, but you need to look at them as also standardization. Most of the processes that we provide are now within best practices. We are providing close to 500 best practices that you can use in different line of businesses, where you can take what the standard is, look at what SAP is providing. Not because it's standardization, that doesn't mean that you cannot make adaptations. I mean, there is obviously the capabilities to do adaptation, but the way you go about adaptations and the way you go into configuring the system is different to, for example, an ERP system or an on-premise system. Just to give you just a sense of how we go into S4, we don't have an HMG or SPRO, SPRO. Basically, there is no implementation guide in the backend that you can access and configure the system. In the cloud, we offer a concept that is called SSUI, Service Configuration UIs, that will allow you then to configure the system based upon the best practices that we have and the parameters that we have. Now, to also set the stage correctly, because we're looking for standardization, there is also a commitment we need to make with the standardization, and that means all the possibilities to create very tailored, very specific processes that on-premise give you today basically are not there in the cloud. And let me try to explain this because I don't want to leave you with a bad impression of what S4HANA Cloud is. But in on-premise today, you have the ability to tailor the system to the best of your abilities. Like if you are looking to create maybe specific document types, do copying procedures, do pricing routines, do all type of any specific adaptations, that is possible on-premise. In the cloud, depending on the line of business, you need to look at what possibilities for adaptations there are. And the main reason why we don't provide all the flexibility we did on-premise is for the simple reason that we are looking for a standardized implementation of business processes. But most importantly, we're also looking into an innovation wave that is quarterly, that basically every quarter we need to upgrade the systems. And these, in S4HANA Cloud, these upgrades are mainly driven by SAP. So because this is a software as a service, SAP takes care of all the basis, all the technology stack from the system, and SAP will be doing the technical upgrades with the innovation. Hence, all the parameterizations and all the modifications or all the stuff that you can do on premise are basically restricted in the cloud. And this is very important because I do manage customer care for S4HANA Clouds in the Americas. And at times when we talk to our customers and then we go into a journey for the cloud, the first question we ask is, are you ready and have the cloud mentality? And they say, yes, we are ready. Or our company has decided that we want not only managed cloud, we want really public cloud, a multi-tenant environment where everything is a standard. And when we then start working on the implementation or deployment, the first thing that they ask us, hey, I remember in ERP or R3, I was able to do this, add this document type, this copying routines, I was able to have this. I said, no, we're not able to do it because we need to keep the standard processes. And this is where, some of the people then need to adapt and then decide, okay, is the cloud really ready for my business where I will be able then to consume best practices, make adaptations, right? But not the full array of adaptations that I used to have on premise. And, I want to set the stage here to give you full disclosure on what the cloud is and what is not. Because if you're looking for a quick deployment option, standardized business processes, the cloud is really a very good option. But if you still have very complex business processes with a lot of specific adaptation, you need to ask yourself if you can live without them. Because in the cloud, basically, you will look into the standard. There are possibilities for adaptations. I will talk about a little bit about our extensibility capabilities, but definitely is a different deployment option. Being part of SAP for so long, I have always worked on ERP. And for some time, I was responsible for the upgrade office at SAP. So I was in charge of moving our customers from R3 to ERP. And I call it the seams as past ERP implementation. But if you look at these, the three things when we were looking at upgrades that really increased the cost was, for example, the downtime the customer was willing to accept, how many modifications they have from an ABAP remediation perspective, how much do you touch the system in terms of, if we are going to upgrade, we need to do ABAP remediations. And then was how strong the testing was going to do. I mean, you would do a regression testing, functional testing, and these were the three things. What we are seeing now is, it has estimated that there are systems that are heavily modified, and then you need to ask yourself the question is this code still something that I need today, right? If you have very specific business processes that are tailored, you need to look at the best practices today and see, maybe at that time we did this modification because this functionality was not there. But today, with the power of having an S4HANA Cloud based on also on SAP HANA, you have the ability also to have embedded analytics and get access to the analytics. So a lot of also these modifications were reports that you were maybe very tailored to you. Today you have the ability to use the engine where you can then go directly into the data, We provide a lot of capabilities to get CDS views, core data services where you can get the data and then create the reports as you need. So you need to really look at, how much of these modifications do I need or I will be able to retrofit. And quite frankly, if they are still very valid core processes that were modified that you still continue to go through, then my recommendation will be that you look into on-premise. S4HANA on-premise, you might be looking into maybe reduction of TCO in terms of the whole operations. Could be also an on-premise on a managed service capacity to maybe reduce the total cost of operations. But if you are then willing to then look at, I will retrofit the standard, meaning I will retrofit the core modifications that I have, I will go to standard processes, and you are willing then to look, the cloud could potentially be a very good option for you to deploy it. Quicker, faster, quarterly innovations. But for example, in the cloud, you have no possibility to do the core all modifications that you can do in ERP or even in S4. Now, we have the ability to do adaptations and extensions, and I will explain what the strategy is, but this is, for me, something that needs to be clearly defined when you move into a decision for S4HANA Cloud. Now, I know this is something that, because I ask also for the horizon of your planning, but mainstream, at least this is the plan, mainstream for ERP supposed to end on 2025. So which means is, from now on you have around, let's say, 5 years to plan the area. Depending on how complex your business process is, this could be either S4 Cloud as a potential or good opportunity, or could be maybe S4 on-premise, or could be an S4 on-premise in different deployment options. And I will talk a little bit about that. But that's something that needs to also take in consideration when you are looking into how are you going to deploy it. Now, I also want to make the fact that SAP support never ends, which means is one thing is mainstream maintenance, that SAP proactively will provide support, but normally we have customers that as long as they pay their maintenance fees, they continue to be supported. Now, the scope of the support services are different, right? Because then SAP does not proactively, provide functionality. That's why I want to make clear, because I don't want to say this is the end. That's mainstream maintenance, which will include proactive support or messaging notes and everything. But, we have customer-specific maintenance as well, right? Now, for me, before going into what the cloud is, things that you need to look into is your current situation. How mature your business is. Can you standardize your processes? Meaning, can you live with what SAP offers, or you really need to tailor your businesses? If you are up to compliance, IFRS, GDPR, things that might impact also your operation. Are you looking to fully automated processes where then you would like to manage by exception, or you would like to then really do manual activities, pending, the importance of why you need to make these checks? Is your business also ready to consume on a quarterly basis? When I was responsible for upgrades at SAP, normally when we were looking into R3 to ERP upgrades, we were looking into customers normally having a system within 3 to 5 years before doing an upgrade, give or take. I'm not giving an average, but between 3 to 5. Very onerous process to do an upgrade. Even when I remember back in 2007, 2008, we were the ones saying, hey, because we have enhancement packages, do in 2 steps. Do a technical upgrade first, stabilize the system, and then do functional deployments with enhancement packages. Today, with S4 Cloud, you have quarterly upgrades. And let me put the term upgrades. In the cloud, this becomes quarterly innovations. Every quarter, we release new innovation in all areas. You have now the ability to have the best practices and deploy. The difference is You don't need to do any technical upgrades. SAP will manage everything for you, as well as the maintenance of the system, which means is we support the upgrades, we support the whole maintenance of the system as it comes to hot fixes, support pack stacks. Everything is managed by SAP. And the role of the people managing S4HANA Cloud is to understand every round of innovation quarterly is, one, is test the system because it's still testing something that the customer needs to do. But most importantly is what new innovation am I willing to consume, or what innovation does the business will provide to us. And it changed a little bit the way on how we look into deployment. Normally, when you look into ERP, you're looking, okay, first we need to go through the technical upgrade. I mean, if you are, first and foremost, if you are in ERP looking into S4, depending on what option you want to do, let's say you want into the cloud, the only option now is a greenfield implementation. Just new implementation to the cloud. If you are looking for S4HANA on-premise, you will have the ability to do a conversion, a system conversion, or there are different paths to go into S4. And that plays a role. Now, in regards to custom code and modifications, I did mention that how complex the integration is. That's also something that needs to be considered, whether you have a lot of extensions and enhancements. And, what I said is the appetite of testing. Because if you look with a quarterly deployment, we offer now automated testing tools, but it's still a process that the customers need to do. Every time we, have a quarterly innovation cycle, there is some testing that needs to be done. S4HANA Cloud includes automated testing tools, so you can do a lot of automation. SAP also offers, as part of the subscription, it's embedded, it's not a separate service, something that we call post-upgrade testing as well, where we can then perform the testing for you. But there is still the piece that you need to test this. And the time frame of the projects, I will tell you a little bit about how the upgrades are run, is rapidly compared with what we normally do on-premise. Because every time that we have a quarterly upgrade, we announce when the upgrades are going, and then the cloud, and I forgot to mention that, works on a different landscape. We have a two-tier landscape, QA and production. There is no development, okay? Because obviously we don't want modifications in the system, so you work with the standardization. And then when we go into an upgrade, we upgrade Q. We give our customers 2 weeks to test, and then we go into production. And I know that for people that have been running ERP, that looks like not enough time, but if it's planned and we have proven customers that have done it, if you have your automated testing, it's really possible. Really the consumption of these best practices. And the rest is security, governance, the whole TCO. Now, let me talk to you. This topic is around S4 Cloud, that is software as a service in a multi-tenant environment. But I wanted also to set the stage around our offerings, because I do know that some of you, when I was asking, are considering the cloud as an option, but maybe you are considering on-premise. And then in on-premise, we also have different deployment options. So since this is not an overview presentation, I want to at least explain, layman terms, what I mean with the different versions of S4. So when you leave here, you understand what SAP offers as of today. Today, even though you are seeing SaaS, private cloud, and on-premise, let me set the stage. There are only 2 versions of S4. We have the on-premise version, and we have the cloud version, okay? The cloud version is what I have been discussing today. That is the software as a service, quarterly upgrades based on UI, innovation, best practices, all of this. It's really, from a versioning perspective, a different product, standardized with the core capabilities of ERP. But then on-premise is S4, and these on-premise have the option to be deployed in different manners. Can be deployed in a private cloud, which allows you then to bring a system and do managed services on-premise, or you can then decide to buy it from SAP, what we call a single tenant edition, which means is you will have the capabilities of an on-premise system, but managed by SAP. Now, functionally and technically, it's the same system, but if SAP is managing the operations, there might be maybe some constraints of what you can do and what you cannot do in this system. For example, if I look at private cloud, same on-premise system, but managed by SAP or one of our hyperscalers, but for example, in the private cloud or the single tenant edition as well, we do not allow our customers to do core modifications that might require a license key. Why? Because we want to maintain the cost of operations as well the upgradability of the system, in check, right? Because as you start then adding modifications that increase the total cost of operations, and if we want then to update the system, that also has some implications. So SAP S4HANA Cloud is a SaaS model governed by SAP or shared, could be also the deployment of on-premise, up to 4 times per year. That's our current plan. Every quarter we release a new innovation cycle, and we basically do it through configurations. It's not your old IGMG or SPRO. We have a new concept called SSUIs where you will be able to do that. And then you have the on-premise, which is also a very robust, very strong core processes, could be deployed on the traditional way on your data center, or you can then do a private cloud, to then benefit from maybe the run of the infrastructure on a subscription basis. And then in the SaaS, we have also the ability to have something that we call single tenant edition, which technically is our on-premise system, but is deployed also in a different deployment model, what we call on a single tenant edition managed by SAP or hyperscalers, where you will have technically an on-premise system but run by SAP. And I think these are the considerations that you need to do. Because if you go into the path of cloud, then you will be and need to be open to standardizations. That's why I said, look at your current state, look if you are willing then to go into a standardization mode, look at what you have, the complexity of your landscape, then to make these decisions. As I said, so we have S4HANA Cloud and S4HANA, consider what we call on-premise or the different deployments I talk. But as 2 products, they are very robust. My organization also covers now S4HANA as well. We have the regional implementation group under my team. We also look and help our customers with on-premise implementations or maybe deployments. Could be on a infrastructure as a service with a hyperscaler or the single tenant edition. In reality, cloud, Fiori-based, on-premise, you can also benefit from Fiori. However, there are some additional technical considerations that you need to do to implement Fiori. You can still run it on a GUI. However, since all these processes are benefiting from new best practices, the whole idea is to move into a Fiori base, because this is where we are making investments in terms of how we want the rendering of analytics, how we want these business processes to work. Next generation UX, end-to-end analytics, intelligent automation. What you will see at times, SAP will provide new functionality first in the cloud. And because we have a yearly cycle in on-premise, then functionality will come into on-premise. Case in point, demand-driven MRP, predictive MRP came first into the cloud, and now it was released with 1908. But also there are different functional differences. So for example, if I look into warehousing, logistic and warehouse, the cloud has the ability to do warehousing, but I will set on a lightweight version, which means is you have the ability to have bin management, do all the warehouse tasks. But if you are looking for a very comprehensive warehouse that has the ability to do transportation, cross-docking, waves, additional labor, then you will need to look into on-premise. And I think that this is something that when you look into the products, you need to look into standardization, you need to look into the reduction of TCO, the quarterly upgrades, but you also need to look into the functional depth that you need, right? And that is basically where SAP is offering one or the other. Both of them are very strong, very complete, and then they have just different functional depths into what you can do. Now, the topic I want to discuss now, that I provide this overview, is to talk to you about how we go about implementation of S4. Could be cloud or also on-premise. We use something that is called SAP Activate. For those of you that have been in the SAP landscape for a long time, this used to be what we used to call accelerated SAP. Okay? I work on the accelerated SAP team also 2 decades ago, where we were looking into speed, rapid implementations of R3. If you recall, that was also the notion of accelerated SAP, was really accelerated implementation of S4. It's a methodology based also on a strong set of rules in how you go about it. So SAP provides the ability to have a guide to look at implementing S4. Could be S4 on-premise or S4HANA cloud. In my topic today, I will cover mainly the cloud version, but you will have the ability to have all the business process delivered, ready to run. And what I mean is really when you get the system, it's already provisioned with all the best practices and the scope item elements that you need. So if you need, for example, I want the system, I know I'm going to use warehousing, you can then go, provision the system, require the activation of this scope item, so it will create completely a set of structures that then you can replace names, but it's a fully functional system that has everything that you need to run the system. We'll give you speed of innovation, greater productivity, because it's a guide that contains everything that needs to be done. Basically, something that you will see is we also have phases. It goes with the discover. If you are looking to compare what the system can give you and not give you, you need to look into discovery assessment. It's a service provided by SAP free of charge through your account executives that will allow you then to go and then compare the functional differences, whether, to make sure the cloud is what you are looking for. But something that I would like to call your attention is there is a concept called fit to standard. I mean, in a traditional ERP implementation, is what we do is blueprinting, right? So we go and blueprint because we want to look at the to-be and the as-is situation, to-be situation, where then you are enabling, how you want to run your businesses. But here, we change it. We call it fit to standard, which means is we're providing your standard, and then you are looking to see if this is a fit for you. Now, it could be the case that it's not exactly the fit that you are looking for. We have the possibility for adaptations, and we will look into extensions, in-app extensions, side-by-side extensions, but it's not your traditional blueprinting from as-is to be with a lot of rises, enhancements, and things that you need. Is what you see is what you get with the possibility of adaptation. And the rest is, of course, the scope and configuration, executed differently. Also, the transport of the system is managed differently, right? You don't need basically a tool like the Solution Manager or Charm to do transport requests. The transports are managed by SAP, and then you have possibilities then to operate and run the system. This is a little bit about this. Now, when we provision the system, you have the ability to look into a cloud trial version. If you would like to take a look at S4HANA Cloud, there is a trial, 14 days. You can then look. There are some business processes you can execute. But if you move into the process, the way that we proceed is by creating the following. So if you sign a subscription with us, we give you a started system. That started system, consider this as a fully functional system pre-configured, where then you can start looking at the system, start to look into the fit to standard. And when you are ready then to move, the started system gets decommissioned. We don't do any transfers of anything from the started system to queue. We provided the started system, so you have a fully functional pre-configured system to look at the fit to standard. And then when you have completed that action, we then provision Q and P. And then you start with your implementations on Q by configuring the system. And then SAP will do the transports for you. When you complete a cycle, so we try to work in an agile way. So you configure, and then you transport. So we had a very specific process on how we do Q2P to enable then the configuration to be transported into production. We also include a migration tool inside S4. It's called the Migration Cockpit. That is also available on-premise as well, but that will allow you then to run your processes. And we have, just in interest of time, there is plenty of content about SAP Activate. We have a community. It's growing, more than 35,000 members active on SAP Activate if you would like to check it out. The methodology, like any all accelerated SAP, is also rendered into what we call the SAP Roadmap Viewer. And something that you will see, and I don't know if you have had the chance to look, but is rapid.sap.com BP for best practices. If you are curious to understand what best practices SAP is delivering into any S4HANA cloud and any country, because we have lots of localizations, and you would like then to compare between what we offer in the US versus what we offer in Brazil or Mexico or any other country, the best reference will be into the Best Practices Explorer, because that will give you the scope of the solution. From a deployment perspective, and I'm not covering this today, but there is plenty of content at TechEd. There is no need to use the Solution Manager. And that's interesting because Solution Manager has been the key for implementing SAP. I also have history with a Solution Manager. I was part of the team that built Solution Manager back in the 90s, right? When we were looking into how we move into new implementation methods combined with SAP. Very strong, but in the cloud, today we don't use Solution Manager, we use SAP Activate. We are, however, then building what we call the SAP Implementation Portal for S4HANA Cloud. Cloud ALM, you might hear it in the TechEd, but it will be basically, it's available today, an implementation portal for S4HANA Cloud. Will help you then to do the content-driven deployment, will help you with the fit to standard. Today our customers have the option to use it depending on what the scope of their implementation are, because there might be areas that maybe the content is still not there yet, but that's where we are trying to look for the future in terms of an implementation tool to manage S4HANA Cloud where SAP Activate is there. Now that I explained you, what S4, I explained you what the different deployment options are, how you go about implementing. I really talk about fit to standard, and I mean it because I'm responsible for customer care in North America, and then I see when our customers say, hey, look, the standard is not really working as you guys are telling us. It's becoming really a challenge for our implementation. So let me set the stage. Yes, we want our customers to consume standard processes, but we also provide the ability to do extensions. And the extensions, to make it in an easy way to explain, can be done in two ways. In-app extensibility that allows you then to create or adopt the UI. I mean, there are elements that come with Fiori where you can basically create. Maybe you look at an app, but you don't like the way the structure, the layout, some fields, you can all remove this, create your own layout. But you can create the custom analytics, as I said. We provide the core data services inside S4 where you can then just take, enable, the analytics you want to display. But for example, a lot of customers ask me, hey, what about the bodies? We used to have bodies to maybe, change, the sales header as we save. We want the body to do something specific, a routine for us. These are still in S4 cloud, which means is we have now predefined specific business add-ins in the cloud that if you are looking for routines, they are still there. So even though I said we don't provide modifications, because these are not really modifications. These are like an enhancement framework that we need to protect from upgrades, which means is you can create routines with the business add-ins that will be then protected through the upgrade. So when we do these quarterly upgrades, these are not changed, but we have that ability to add application logic and add database fields and objects. So it is fit to standard. You have the possibilities to extend, but what you don't have is the ability to modify through a license key. So there is adaptation. Now, it might be the case that maybe the process does not work for you. Maybe these business add-ins, the expose of data is not giving you what you need. We provide the ability to then use the SAP Cloud Platform as a side-by-side extension. That allows you to then decouple any specific custom functionality out of the release schedule of SAP. However, what we then ask you is whatever you do on S4, it always needs to tie into the digital core or S4HANA Cloud through a whitelisted API. Actually, there is no other way. It only works through a whitelisted API, which means is SAP is delivering whitelisted interfaces, which means is you can do whatever you want to enhance your business processes in the SAP Cloud Platform. Maybe code that enhance a business process. Maybe you need to add a very specific way on how you want to do number ranges, maybe a specific logic you want to execute if it's not available there. But it always needs to tie with a whitelisted API. If the API does not exist, then you are not able to do this. It's not like in on-premise where we have the ability to have all type of integration technology where anyhow you can then look into the cloud for different reasons, security reasons, the maintainability of that interface, because we upgrade the system every quarter, we need to secure it to a whitelisted API. S4HANA Cloud at the moment offers mainly SOAP and OData. That's our idea to help. Future is to go mainly OData. I'm not talking about this year, I'm talking about in a couple of years, we are trying to really go more into OData, where then OData will help us also to manage more asynchronous message and everything that SOAP does today. So that's the way that you can do it. Now, another topic we are working, and this is also a preview, is not yet available in the cloud, but we are working towards the future next year, is the ability also to centralize a configuration. I mean, if you look now, what our customers are looking at for deployment of cloud services or cloud subscriptions could be the digital core S4 together with Concur or maybe SuccessFactors, right? Or maybe C4. And what we are seeing is that the capabilities for the central business configuration are coming that, okay, if I configure a document type in S4, would I have this for Ariba or maybe something in SuccessFactors? And we are creating a central business configuration where we will use as a central place to configure the system so it can render into the other cloud products. Now, it's a preview. I'm showing you this. But we are really looking into have this new central business configuration next year by 1911. When I mention 1911, that's the release schedule. 19 is for the year, the 11 is the month. So 2019, 11, that's November 1911. We will start piloting this, and we're expecting that we will have the central business configuration as an option to configure systems by next year. Now, in the cloud, in release 1905, so year 2019, in May, we released also a new tool that we call the Release Assessment and Scope Dependency, and I need to apologize for the name, well known inside SAP as the What's New tool, that allows you then to look at your current, if you are an S4HANA Cloud customer, to look at your current scope, and then let you know what changed in terms of functional areas, API. There might be APIs that we deprecate. I mean, obviously, there are deprecation strategies, how we go about deprecation of an API. Could be maybe an old API, we're moving into all data. I mean, there are time frames. It's not that we just deprecate it without any notice. But this tool will show you all the changes we have in functional API, CDS view, authorization, SSUI, everything that comes with the cloud is part of the subscription that you can run every time that you are looking into. Now, I mentioned the upgrades, hotfixes, emergency patches, all managed by SAP. The continuous innovation cycle, I told you, is a two-tier landscape. SAP first do the Q upgrade. We give you 2 weeks to test. Then after the successful testing with automation tools or the post-upgrade testing, if you then engage on this service with SAP, then you can basically move into transport. The cloud operates differently as on-premise. As we do the transport, we have also restrictions on what we can transport it into the system because we need to keep them in sync, right? So these are determinations that needs to be also considered when you do a project. You know, when you have an upgrade wave and you are pressing to then configure all the system, you know, what I always advise my customers is you need also to look at the upgrade windows because as we do upgrade at least for 2 weeks, we try to freeze the system because we need to keep them in sync. Now, the last topic I wanted to talk, and you know, with that I will open it up for questions. And if we're not able to cover all the questions, I will be outside. I have time and we can talk. But it's the introduction with a 2-tier landscape. What we are seeing now is that some of our customers might be running mission-critical operations where maybe the public cloud might not be, you know, for the scale that they are looking or the complexity that they might look. But they might look into maybe the public cloud to look into merger acquisitions, divestitures. They might be looking into quick time to implementation and value with a full core ERP. So what we are seeing as well is that some of our customers look to do a 2-tier strategy by having maybe headquarters run on-premise, could be ERP or S4 on-premise, and maybe look for subsidiaries to then execute with the public cloud and have the benefit of, you know, the quick value. So there are even predefined best practices included on the Best Practices Explorer that I show you that contain how you can deploy SAP on our headquarter running on-premise and then subsidiaries to rapid implement. I mean, obviously, I know some of our customers look, and we were the ones that said, hey, one single instance, then you go and then implement either your countries or, you know, your subsidiaries in the same template. But what we are seeing with the advantages of the total cost to value, rapid implementation, standardization, some of our customers are looking into these areas. So they might be looking into, you know, maybe a sales office. So they might have on-premise system, then get, you know, S4HANA Cloud for the subsidiary or a specific country they might want to do or a new business venture that they might have. That's also a plan. And in interest of time, I'm just telling you that all of these processes and the integrations are predefined, out of the box, included on the Best Practices Explorer for 2-tier. Not only on processes, the analytic, the master data, and that's basically what I have. But at this time, this is mainly the appendix for you to review. It's included in the presentation. But I would like to make sure that if you have more questions about the Cloud ALM or looking to Activate or the roadmap, there will be also a roadmap session about S4 tomorrow under Sven Denneken. So if you can also look at that, will be an area. That's all what I have to plan. I know we have at least 8 minutes for questions. So if there is any question, I will be happy to take it. Yes? So let me repeat the question for the recording. They were asking me about the capabilities of warehouse management. And if you are looking for maybe stronger capabilities, which means is I can then run S4HANA Cloud, but I need strong capabilities of warehousing. I actually have good news. With S4 embedded, we have what I call, you know, a fully functional warehouse with the capabilities to run bin management, do any type of put-away strategies and manage everything, replenishment, right? You have even the ability to do mobile picking, confirmations, and things like that. But if you really would like to have a more comprehensive warehouse, you can integrate S4HANA Cloud with a third party or with EWM. So you have the ability also, we have best practices deployed to integrate S4HANA Cloud with EWM. So you might also want to say, okay, I will manage S4, but then I will manage my EWM. The thing that you need to consider in that deployment is you will have S4 in the cloud, and you will need then to decide where you will host the EWM. Could be maybe on-premise at your data center, or maybe you would like for SAP to manage this into a deployment into our HANA Enterprise Cloud. Yeah, there was another question here. So the question just for the recording is if EWM has a cloud version. So look, the reality is what we are developing in the cloud is based on EWM, okay? The thing is that it's I will say a light version, okay? But if you want the full capabilities of EWM, that by the way is also embedded in S4 now on-premise, but if you want like a standalone EWM, you will need to deploy on-prem, or you will need also to do a deployment into a managed service through maybe, the HANA Enterprise Cloud or maybe one of the hyperscalers. And then you will need to work with what we call a hybrid environment. Now, the considerations that you need to take on that is the following. S4HANA Cloud is quarterly upgraded, but you still need to follow the maintenance and support of your EWM system, right? And I think these are the deployment options that people need to look when they go into this type of hybrid deployments. All right? Yes, let me go back to this, and then I'm coming back. Yes? So the question is, what happened with all the third-party systems and platforms that we have connected? For S4HANA Cloud, you will really need to analyze the interfaces and understand what is available, because as I mentioned before, if there is not a whitelisted API, there is no way to integrate that because we need to protect the upgrades, the security, right? So when you look into your landscape, you need to look into how many bolt-ons, third parties you have, and then understand the implications from a functional and integration perspective. If there is not a whitelisted API, it will be difficult to implement. If you need to know which whitelisted APIs SAP offers, you can go to the API hub, api.sap.com, and then we provide all the array of whitelisted APIs for S4HANA Cloud. Thank you. Yes? The question for the recording is, so what happened with single tenant edition? Is single tenant edition a SaaS solution, and if it's on-premise or if it's cloud? So, from a product standpoint, single tenant edition, technically and functionally, is your on-premise version, which means it's 1 yearly upgrade, and the latest release is 1909, single tenant edition. What changes is the deployment option and how it's going to be managed. So you have the ability to run it by the HANA Enterprise Cloud or hyperscaler, but if you think through the nature of the system is technically and functionally the same on-premise system, but it has the SaaS components because you have, if you look at the subscription of a single tenant edition, the possibility to run the upgrades by SAP, the technical aspects. But functionally and technically is the 1909 system today. So which means it doesn't go like the cloud on a quarterly release schedule.
So in that context, the integration aspects, we can talk. The integration aspects don't have to be in the list of the whitelisted APIs.
Correct, but there might be restrictions that might come with the HANA Enterprise Cloud. But to answer your question is right. Now for single tenant edition, there is an Activate also. So to truly get the benefits of a single tenant edition, you want also to go with a cloud mentality, which means is there are 5 golden rules that we call for single tenant, which means is, yes, you can have integration, but why not try to look into the usage of whitelisted APIs? Because the more you add, the more complex it gets when it goes into the run of upgrades. But yes, to answer your question, there are much more capabilities when it comes to integration. You don't have the limitations of the whitelisted, but the limitations that might be inherited in the deployment that you had either with the HANA Enterprise Cloud or the hyperscalers. But from an integration perspective, you have what on-premise has today. So you can go IDOCS, BAPIs, maybe SOAP, OData. But look, since the future is going into cloud, I will try maybe to go SOAP OData instead of BAPI or IDOCS. Because at the end, our idea is to deprecate these technologies. But maybe you need it for your process, then you go IDOCS, right? Or BAPIs.